All right, welcome to episode 4 of the Forefront podcast. And we have Jack and Greg on again for this episode. These guys can maybe say hi real quick.
Oh, hello.
Hey,
Cool,
how's it
cool.
going, guys?
And for anyone that wants to be a guest on a future episode, feel free to reach out to us. Or if you have even a topic that you explicitly want to discuss, we'd be happy to include you in this conversation if we think it's a good fit. So you can join our Discord server. You can reach out to us via email. And that information is on our YouTube channel where this will be published. And I'll also include it on my personal Facebook and then my personal X and also my X.com or Twitter, and then also on Reddit. So you can find it there. And we'd love to have some additional guests on for subsequent episodes here. So today we're going to be doing some React content where we're going to discuss some content that was actually shared with us on our Discord server. So our Discord server is a great place to share with us content that you want us to react to, and we'll check it out and then incorporate it into the episode if we think it's a good fit. But a portion of the React content today is going to be from somebody that submitted a piece of content for us to react to, and that will be coming up here shortly. And then we're gonna discuss a few topics, one of them being the parental role in activism on this issue, and a little bit potentially about the anatomy of the foreskin and how we need to do a better job of presenting that to the public and what we can actually get or begin doing to help the public build a mental model on the foreskin, and why that is such a significant dimension of this activism actually is that process of over time helping the general public build a mental model on this anatomy and the anatomical significance of the foreskin. And then we're going to briefly get into the role of medical professionals and community building efforts that intactivism can be doing, and also what Forefront specifically is going to be doing in the near future to begin facilitating that community building. Is there anything else that I didn't cover here, Jack and Greg, that you'd like to discuss, or anything you'd like to chime in on that?
No, nothing comes to mind.
Oh, I think you hit it all.
Alrighty. So start things off here, maybe we'll cover the parental role side of things. So to kick off that conversation, maybe a question we could initially focus on is, why are there so few mothers and fathers publicly standing by their sons in advocacy right now? And, I think there's a lot of depth to this question, or the answer to this question, and I think it's very nuanced, and there's a lot of different perspectives to look at it from. But I'm having a challenging time in my own personal life getting my parents involved in my activism. And even a simple request like, hey, could you join me on this podcast, is a very, very profound ask for them. It seems like at the moment, even though my mom's previously been on a podcast episode with me that Brendan Marotta hosted, she seems to have some reservations now. And I'm not trying to be too critical of my mother, but for me, that type of request is the absolute bare minimum. And there's definitely an expectation that she does participate in this, but I can't force her. I mean, if I could, I would use the courts to literally legally force her to be a part of activism with me if that was a possibility, but we are not in that position right now. And I find though that there's a lot of parents, there's a lot of high profile younger intactivists, and their parents don't really participate in the advocacy with them, even if they are sympathetic and even encourage the son's activism. Why do we not see more parent-son combos right now, where a mother and a son, a father and a son, or both parents and the son doing some basic advocacy together? Why is that so rare right now, especially with older men? Maybe, a young mother and her young child, a young mother might go to a Bloodstained Men protest event, and she cut her son and she brings her son and she does this type of protest. But we're really not seeing a lot of these parents standing by their sons in a very meaningful way right now. And I wonder if it's just because we haven't really been asking for that, or it's just challenging to incorporate the parents into the advocacy because they feel turned off by it for one reason or another. Do you guys have any input or insight onto that, on why you think we haven't seen the materialization of that yet? Because I think it's actually, and I occasionally you do see it, and it's a very powerful um combination. That combination of son and mother and or father, there's some persuasive testimony that comes out of that. And maybe I'll share, we'll look at an example of that here shortly, very briefly, where it's actually a Jewish mother and a son, and they kind of break down their journey through this. And the mother definitely seems like she's an advocate in her own right. And then there's a few other examples out there, but I haven't seen too many of them yet. And the reason that I bring it up is because I think it can be a very powerful dimension of advocacy, and that people respond well to that dynamic of a mother, son, and father coming together and like standing as a team. And it's like, oh, not this hostile situation. It's more like, hey, we're trying to figure out a solution to this problem together. But I think it's a major ask right now for affected victims to ask this of their parents. And I would imagine 95% of parents or more would not be open to this. That metric I completely just took out of my ass right there. But I would be shocked if even 5% of parents would be comfortable doing public advocacy on this issue, like even talking to their friends about it in a meaningful way. I think is a big ask. So, but I want to create a culture where the parents feel obligated to, if their sons are interested, well, really, regardless, I want to create a culture where the parents feel some responsibility to do advocacy on this. And why don't they just intuitively feel that way? They can even see the grief of their son. They can see potentially their suffering dramatically. Why wouldn't the parents independently begin doing advocacy on this issue? It just, to me, seems like we're getting abandoned by our parents.
Well, I think engaging in this is basically an admission that you've made the biggest mistake you could possibly make, aside from sacrificing your son on the altar of Molech, basically. That carries a lot of negative attributes to it. There's a taboo surrounding the entire topic in general. I
Right.
mean, admitting you've made a huge mistake, I think, looms very large in reasons why parents don't involve themselves, even if they do somewhat agree or acknowledge the harm that's been done.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's largely for a similar reason that we don't see many activists of any variety, parent activists or any activists for this issue. I think it's just because a lot of people feel like there's nothing to gain and everything to lose from engaging here. And that's a real problem if you are trying to drum up support for a movement. If people don't feel like they have anything to gain by joining, why would they? So I think that's part of what's applying here to the parents as well.
Fair enough. Yeah. Definitely think that is occurring. But even for men that are very, very passionate about this, like in my scenario, like I can't even get my parents invested in a very meaningful way, from my perspective, in a meaningful way. Other people might think it's very different, and that, my parents have really, really invested. But yeah, I think this is going to be a tough angle to pursue in terms of getting parents more invested in their advocacy for their children. But um, and I wonder how we can move the ball forward here. But the bottom line is, it's a goddamn expectation. If your mutilated son wants you to do advocacy, you're going to be doing advocacy on it. And I want the culture and the people to reinforce that as well. Like we need to be looking down on parents that are not speaking out about this, that have mutilated their children, and particularly so when the children want them to be speaking out about it. So I think that we're in the driver's seat here. We're in charge. We're the commanders. And this is the expectation that needs to be happening here. So how that's all going to come to fruition is obviously a whole other story. But that's the vibe that I want to start injecting into activism and to parents as well, is that you've participated and participated in and facilitated felony sexual battery on your child, and it's the highest order of criminal offense. And The expectation is that you need to be speaking out about this, and you need to be sharing your journey into how you got however you want to frame how you got suckered into this, and why we need to make sure that this does not happen in our communities anymore, and why it needs to be policed or abandoned, criminalized, and policed. So I think a lot of people, though, are extremely hesitant on challenging parents in any meaningful way right now. And we've certainly created a culture in intactivism of, and I'm using this term, infantilization. People will just say, gentle education and things like that. But we haven't this community kind of doesn't expose parents and shields and protects parents from the more unsavory dimensions of this issue. And I think we need to just rip off the Band-Aid here and say, hey, you did commit a mistake here. You did, and it was the highest order of mistake that you'll ever be involved in. And so you claim, like, I do anything for my children, I do anything to protect my children. Well, actually, you handed your son over with reckless abandonment to be genitally mutilated, and now you're not going to take any meaningful steps to rectify this. To me, that's just a total piece of shit, to be honest with you. So, and there's a lot more words that I could use around that. But yeah, there's some expectations here, and we need to start setting them, especially around the parental involvement. But I'm curious to hear pushback from you guys and things like that. I think that that's something that a lot of people push back on me on, and incorporating their parents in any way, being confrontational with their parents is basically impossible for a significant amount of the grown men in this movement. Like in a very, very meaningful way, it's challenging for them, especially in a way that will pressure them into advocacy on this issue. And I could be wrong about all of this. It could be not very meaningful to take this step of getting parents more involved, but it's been something that's been on my mind a lot lately. And I think that there is a lot of substance to this strategy, and I think there is a lot here, but I don't really know what the next steps are to encourage or pressure parents into being involved in advocacy, whether it's with their children or independently, entirely themselves, even if their child doesn't want to do any sort of advocacy and feels embarrassed by it and things like that. I think that, the parents should be taking the lead here. It's really like the victims are taking the lead. And we start to see this regret mother momentum showing up, but
I think most activist organizations probably work like that. I mean, we don't
yep.
see many former segregationists in the civil rights movement.
I mean,
That's sort of the natural way things tend to happen.
Absolutely. That's an excellent point, Greg. But in this case, it's like they're trying to claim that they didn't know any better and, they got duped here. So
Another thing
I
is,
think they're trying to be the ally and do none of the work.
another thing is, if you want people to do a mea culpa, I can sort of understand that. If you're talking about getting them involved really directly in advocacy and activism, I don't know what to make of that, because my concern is if you conscript these people into the movement, you basically have a conscript army. You're going to have a low motivated, not well trained conscript army. You're going to have people who don't really have a firm intactivist moral philosophy. They're not really vanguard material necessarily.
Yeah, that's a fair point. It's a fair point. Okay, well,
I think I have a concern, or maybe it's a question as well. I guess the concern is some of the ways that you could try to bring parents or your parents or my parents into the movement. I feel like it sets up the dynamic in a way that's too powerless. As in, it kind of feels like if I ask my parents who were originally involved in what was done to me to get involved with this issue or activism around this issue, and they say no, it almost, to me, would, I don't know, spiritually is not the right word, but it would metaphorically kind of feel like if they would just tell me no, I'm giving them the opportunity to say they don't want to get involved right now or for whatever reason. Kind of feels like they're handing me back over to the knife for a second time. As in, I laid all my cards on the table and they still said no. So I have no cards left to play. And that power dynamic is kind of terrifying to me. That's not the power dynamic I'd like to enter into when doing activism around this issue.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective, and kind of a whole other subject to touch on, which maybe we'll table just for right now, but I'd love to circle back to that another time. And I had similar experiences myself when I first started speaking out about this and to my parents and things like that. I'm like, well, if they don't support me, it's going to really jeopardize our relationship. If they don't support me in the ways that I'm expecting and things like that. And it did severely jeopardize our relationship. And it took many, many years to seriously to get on good ground with them again. So I think that's a very reasonable point to bring up, and why I think some men do hesitate in being more open with their parents and trying to get their parents more involved, because there's a lot of disappointment in many instances to be found there, and it goes way beyond disappointment. It can be like heartbreak and things like that. So interesting, yeah, interesting point.
One last thing about this. Another concern is that it could turn the movement into something of a stage for people's individual trauma passion plays, because you're now going to have victims right alongside basically perpetrators. I think they're probably lower on the totem pole than the physicians who have the education to know exactly what the anatomy does and why it's wrong. But yeah, you're going to have these people side by side. I could envision it creating a lot of ongoing friction, emotional tumult, things of that nature.
That's a fair point. Yeah,
Not in every case, but
yeah, all interesting things to keep in mind here.
I don't want the
But it's also,
perpetrators picking the direction of the movement. If you get a lot of them involved, they have more of a say in the way things go. And I kind of want this to be, in some ways, a victim-centered movement.
yeah, I'm
yeah,
not sure. We might even be seeing this already with regret mommies in terms of steering things and sort of being, I don't know, education based and gentle education, and they just tend to be consensus based and non-confrontational. You can end up in a position where the perpetrators end up determining the strategy of the movement, and that's not a place where I would want to be.
yeah, great points. We should be really cognizant and careful of that, because I would not want to see things go in that direction. And I think that it's starting to, we see signs of that right now, especially in the online activism and things like that. The regret mothers have significant weight and pull in this movement right now. And I did kind of have an emotional breakdown the other day, but I got into an argument with a mother on Facebook. I don't know if she was a regret mother or not, but I had commented on one of Brother K's posts around this mother who had this short video where she was talking about how she didn't she had circumcised a previous son, and it honestly seemed, I can't remember now if it was a video or a written post. She there was a lot of blame to assign to her in this instance, and she didn't circumcise the next sons, and everyone was like, oh great, she didn't circumcise the next sons, but her culpability in the first one was extreme. Oh yeah, I remember now, she was in the room watching the circumcision and wanted it, maybe was having second thoughts, but ran out of the room, and the husband stayed in there. And so all of the other people were in there. Well, at least she learned better now. And it's just, for me, I'm like, well, that situation is just totally fucked. And I kind of spoke my mind on that. I'm like, imagine being in that room watching your son being literally genitally mutilated, and not just running off with your child or stopping at midway. They saw all this, screaming, and they saw the genital cutting. And I just find that to be, unfathomably perverse and violent. And all of these parents claiming like, we do anything for our children, or stop sexual abuse at any cost and things like that. It's all a fucking facade, guys. There is a huge percentage of people in our country that'll just watch their infant son get butchered. And in this case, though, the mother didn't circumcise her future children. But anyway, long story short, I commented on that and spoke my mind. And some mother tried intervening and said, we need to use gentle education, and it's not fair, and blah, 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 blah. And I gave a pretty strongly worded response to that basically amounted to, know your fucking place in this movement and don't challenge me again. Seriously, that's almost, I said that in the post. And I never looked at a reply to that, but that's the tone that I wanted to set here, is that, these are spaces for the victims of this practice, and we're going to dominate these spaces, and our perspectives are going to dominate these
Sorry,
spaces.
I didn't quite understand that. She was considering
I,
doing it
I
to a second son?
No, not necessarily. Well, yeah. I think in that post she was considering doing a second son, but it was more that she hadn't done it for her subsequent children. But I think that she did mention there was some consideration there for them to look the same. But really, it was more that she was present in the operating room, watching the whole thing, and didn't intervene and stop it. So everyone might have different perspectives on that, but for me, the only right solution there is to intervene, stop the physician, grab your child, and terminate the whole operation. So if you don't do that, I think some parents claim we didn't really know what was going on. It was abstracted away from us. This parent can't claim that, and she just watched her son get butchered and ran out of the. So I'd be curious, if you guys think that that's not just kind of irredeemable behavior, I'd be curious to hear. But especially the front that a lot of parents like to put on. We'll do anything for our child. We'd protect them from all sorts of physical damage and rape and everything. All these parents worried about Epstein and things like that. The Epsteins are all fucking around us, guys. The Epsteins are all around us. So, but I'd be curious to hear you guys' take on that.
I think in some ways it should be flipped, as in I think the parents should almost be begging me or begging us to join, and we should be turning them away. As in the parents should want us to think, is there anything I can do? They feel so guilty. Is there anything I can do to make up for it? And we could be like, I don't know, but probably not. And I think number one, I think that's kind of the correct frame. It's a much more powerful frame. And then also, I think it has an interesting psychological effect, as in when you beg people to join, I don't always think that works in your favor. I think interestingly, forbidding people or prohibiting them from joining makes them want to join more. No one wants to be in a club that will let them in. People want to be in clubs that won't let them in. And if you don't let them in and don't easily forgive them, that might actually have a positive effect on them wanting to participate.
That's very interesting thoughts. Yeah, I'd love to explore that psychological engineering more. For sure. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. But I do really appreciate how you presented that initially, in the sense that, yes, I think ideally the parents would have taken the initiative themselves, and we just don't see that at the moment at all. So we can create an environment, though, I think it's going to happen over time, obviously, where they feel such a cultural pressure. We've created such a comprehensive narrative around this, and given so much substance to this theory, that they just feel a cultural and societal responsibility to involve themselves in it. That's I think the ideal situation that we're in, and not us having to beg them to get involved. In that we've set the cultural tone for the normies, and they're now kind of following the script.
Could I?
Yeah, I like that a lot. And engineer a society to make them feel like they.
Yeah, there's kind of some other things I wanted to cover, but we kind of discussed it during the conversation here. But it's around, how do we reconcile compassion for parents with justice for victims? Yeah, I don't know if I want to get into that actually too much right now. So I think we're going to move on to the next major discussion point, which is around community building. And I want to circle back to the parental role later on. I thought that was an interesting discovery process there. And that's partially the role of the podcast right now. And who knows, it might evolve over time, but it's partially like a strategy, a real-time strategy discussion. And I think that's a really cool element of this podcast. We're not doing all the things behind the scenes. We're doing it out in the open, and we invite other people to come in and challenge us or support what we're saying. This is also partially an arena of debate, or a debate arena, where people can come in and speak their mind and get feedback in real time. So in terms of the community building side of things, though, one of the questions that I wanted to go over was, how can we better support intactivists who feel burnt out or feel isolated right now? And I think it's part of a larger discussion point, just in terms of how we can get intactivists in general more invested. But there is a lot of existing men that were exposed to intactivism and then kind of just walked away from it because they didn't find that they could get involved with it very easily, find much meaning there, and it wasn't going in the direction that they like. So I know a lot of these men who feel extremely passionate about this, but have no idea how to get invested, or don't really want to associate even with any of the existing intactivist brands or organizations. But they're like super, super passionate about this and feel grievance sometimes even every single day, but have no outlet for it right now at all. So obviously we're trying to create that community here with Forefronts and bring back in these disenfranchised men into a community and bring them into our Discord, bring them into our conversations, even here onto the podcast and things like that, and find ways to involve them in meaningful ways with the long-term goal. Like the more people we bring into a podcast, bring into the Discord server, engage with regularly, these people can become important members of our community here over time. And I don't see too many other intactivist organizations kind of doing this type of outreach that we're theorizing here, where we build good rapport with a lot of grievanced men over time and then start funneling them into our intactivist pursuits that hopefully and optimally will align with their own goals. And I've just come across a lot of men now that don't feel like the existing intactivist brands and organizations are representing them very well. But I think there's a lot of novel stuff that will come from this type of community building as well. Like we're not really I don't think we've explored all that can be explored in terms of the activism yet on this issue. And we're really in the early stages of intactivist activism at the moment. But do you guys
So
have any
we're
thoughts on that?
sort of thinking about the young men who got radicalized by Eric Klopper's presentation at this point some years ago, and whose
That's
needs
a good
have been
point. Yeah.
rather underserved since then, or unserved, perhaps.
Right.
I
Exactly.
mean,
Yeah. And some of these men are
I think
already
there's an
starting to reach out
enormous
to
amount of
me from the
energy
episodes that we've
and
done.
potential there. These have been the type of people I've been trying to channel for years at this point and strategize ways to serve them. There's a lot of activist potential. And I mean, we can probably get into more of the detailed ways that this can be acted out into reality. You were previously talking about having fairly dedicated social media response groups where our people just swarm. And I think that's great. I think that's
Yeah,
great,
like a team. Yeah.
first approximation of what's possible um, with these people, aggrieved young men.
Right. Right.
I think even us making this content is a good start. I'm when I was in this position, I can only speak for myself, but I felt very disenfranchised, and I had to disconnect from engaging with this issue for a while. And I just felt like there wasn't a lot of ways for me to engage, nor was there really any content or, even just watching something. There was not a single way to engage. So I think if some of the only times I felt like I was being understood is when I was, for example, listening to one of the interviews, Carter, you gave in the past. So, and I feel like this is just that every week. So hopefully, if there are other people like me, we can find them or they can find us, and we can at least get them watching regularly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that is the initial step. I mean, we need the numbers to have the momentum that I'm envisioning. So we just have it's an interesting situation because it's such an egregious offense. People are so passionate about it, but there's a lot of reasons for this, but they're humiliated, they're just confused. There's all sorts of ways we could describe it, but they're not actually centralizing and becoming advocates against this, even though they might experience grievance every single day. So that to me is a weird situation, especially in the environment that we're in that champions social justice and things like that. We have a group of people a majority of the men in this country that have been genitally mutilated. And there's even now a sizable growing number of men who experience grievance regularly over this. And we still, 99% of these men that experience serious grievance over this regularly, we never hear from them. Like there's this massive untapped audience out there that we need to get in front of and begin mobilizing. And I think the reason we're doing this podcast is that's the initial step. It's getting the exposure out there, showing that there's this group of men that are organizing around this issue. We're not the old breed of intactivists. There is a little bit of a generational divide here, I think, within the intactivist community sometimes. And the younger generation thinks very, very differently. And we were brought up in an era of social justice that I think is going to allow us to be much more potent than we potentially could have been previously in terms of how the social justice environment materialized in our lifetime and how it was weaponized so potently. And I think once this is all exposed, this is felony sexual battery, and the way that our society perceives sexual offenses on children is egregious. I mean, I think it's going too far even. I mean, people are just openly calling for execution of pedophiles, would torture them for 100 years. It's very
I
commonplace
loved your
online right now.
Facebook post about the Epsteins walk among us, cutting off children's genitals.
Yeah, I think it's
I
a good way
used
of
to
framing it. The Epsteins walk among us.
reply to comments on like Alex Jones style posts about the pedophiles being everywhere with basically the same
Yeah, I think it's there's a lot of substance to it, and there's a lot of it gets the gears turning. Nobody challenges me. Like nobody challenges what I'm saying. They don't try and make a case for that not being what's going on here. So I find it to be a very powerful point. And I think and the reason why I think it's powerful is because I think it's 110% the truth. The offenses that our parents were involved in, that these physicians are involved in, are infinitely worse. Well, it's, who knows what Epstein was involved in and the depth of it and things like that. But the amputation of sexual anatomy from an infant is the most obscene of offenses, and the most egregious of sexual offenses. And it is a rape. It absolutely is a rape. It's a mutilation. There's no way to justify it. I mean, the parents' intention, the physician's intention was to amputate our sexual anatomy. That was the intention. You could say, oh, it's for all these different reasons. At the end of the day, what they wanted was our sexual anatomy amputated. They wanted to amputate anatomy from our penises. I think at face value, that's the highest order of one of the highest orders of atrocity in our
right,
in our communities
and that's the
going on right now,
that's the
and it's
best thing you
happening
can say about it.
two to
That's what
4,000 a
constitutes a
day.
successful circumcision.
Right? Yeah,
Right.
children dying, serious botches. Why are we worried about Epstein when 2 to 4,000 children a day are being
See,
genitally
this is the kind
mutilated
of
in the
message that
United
I think
States
could
alone?
be rolled out by the social media response squads that you're theorizing about. I think this is one of the narrow topics you could actually freeze and polarize, and then
And I think there's some depth to it, especially if we can find like short, ways to memify it as well. Like this isn't particularly compelling, but like the Epsteins are all around us, or then tie it to infant circumcision. I don't know how easy of a sell that would be, or how that could really be marketed, but I want to find that meme potential.
As like what you said or anything like that, that's great even just as engagement bait. As in, the people saying
Right.
it don't have to fully believe it, and then you bait people to be like, "That's ridiculous. How could you ever say
Exactly.
that?"
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad we
you
discussed that.
know,
I'm going to further that messaging and
yeah,
maybe even try and come up with a visual for it. Like show Epstein in a
yes,
child
like
circumciser
I
and
was
try and
just
find a way to
envisioning
meme it or something.
some kind of like stone toss style comic where the first panel is like
Hmm.
a Moyle with blood everywhere holding a baby, and then the second panel is Epstein just smiling and saying, well, at least my crimes didn't involve knives. It's something.
Yeah, something like that. And not to focus on Stone Toss too much, but did you know that he is a
Oh,
victim of a botched circumcision? Do you know Stone Toss, Jack?
I do. I think I've
that
heard that actually about the
I do
botch.
seem to vaguely remember
Okay,
hearing something
interesting. Yeah.
about this. He mentioned it in a forum, like under a different name, and they managed to connect it to him.
Hmm. That's right. Yeah.
Should we explain to the audience? Not everyone might be familiar with stone toss. We should probably explain.
That's a great, and I wish I had, yeah, maybe I'll try and share my screen here in 1 second as well. But I do think that a lot of intactivists are familiar with Stone Toss. Not everyone will be, but he certainly has created some standout comic frames, or whatever you call them, comic book frames of
Yeah, he's made
infant
quite a
circumcision
few
in particular.
anti-circ
And
memes. Actually, what I was describing was an reinterpretation of one he's already done, which is where a Moyle is on one panel and then like a vampire is in the other panel looking at him shocked and surprised.
right, yeah, I think he's definitely got some talent. But I am looking for, I can actually, I could show his page, but I'm looking for a specific one on circumcision. But it's obviously I'd have to go far down his profile to find the one related to circumcision. I couldn't search for it either, interestingly enough. It didn't come up. But let me I'm actually going Stone Toss. Just want to
Actually,
throw
yeah,
one up there here
from what
real
I
quick
remember, his detractors were
as an
bringing it
image.
up, saying, "Oh, look at this, haha." dickless. I find it
Yeah, it
fascinating
was
how
yeah, it was
whenever
actually
it's
sick.
necessary, circumcision will always be interpreted negatively, used as a personal insult. It's even used by people who support it. I mean, if you get into arguments with people, they'll claim, oh, they must have cut your dick off, or yeah,
Oh,
you're
yours was just
dickless.
botched or something. Yeah, I've heard that. Like I've heard, oh well, it's not. They'll be sorry about your botched
Or they should
circumcision.
cut
It's
it
not
all
that way
off.
for everyone. Yeah, or even that, or something like that. Yeah. But here's some of the comics that he's made. This is an interesting one, obviously, right here. I don't know how well you guys can see it, but it goes, "My body, my choice." It's a woman, like a feminist, with a sign saying "My body, my choice." It's some type of rally, and then they're in the hospital. She's having her kid. The female doctor also. A lot of people aren't super in tune with this, but my theory and hypothesis, and I think there's a lot of substance around this, is that the vast majority of neonatal circumcisions taking place in the United States right now are being done by female physicians because they make up the majority of pediatricians and obstetricians. Oh, they are, and it's substantial. It's like
Yeah,
75% plus of OBs, and then some comparable with pediatricians. I don't have the exact metrics, and it's growing more and more each year. And
yeah,
then soon they're going to totally dominate. And they're
yeah.
the
No,
ones
I
definitely
was talking
performing
about
the
this some
majority
time
right
ago,
now.
and it's probably, like you said, that the trend is in the upward direction for them taking over the profession. So from what I remember, it was like 86% of the nurses, 85% of the OBGYNs, and like 75% of the pediatricians. I could have been reversing it, and these numbers were probably years old at this point, but are women. Certainly of like new graduates, that's almost certainly true.
Yeah.
Um, well, basically,
And
I
if
mean, it
we
means that
consider,
infant
well, I'll let you
circumcision
finish,
is,
Greg. Sorry.
infant genital mutilation is a crime perpetrated by women against infant boys.
Right. And you even see the women in the Jewish community, they're trying to sneak into the mohel roles as well. I'm not even kidding. I'm not sure if you guys come across that. And I've seen these articles by female mohels, female mohel slash rabbis that are just bragging about it. They're like, look at how successful women are that we're even doing circumcisions now, or this is not just a male thing. Women
Right,
can
and to be
cut dicks too. And it's like this very powerful, I'm like, my God, think of how fucking crazy you'd have to be. I mean, that's not somebody that I'd ever want to have in my community again. I mean, I'd never be able to get on good terms with
Right, and to be
somebody
clear, I don't
in
claim that
that
this was
realm.
always the case. This is a relatively recent phenomenon in terms of the numbers being inverted, although the nursing staff certainly probably was majority female going
Yeah.
back some time. And they have been the ones performing it for
Yeah,
quite a while too, from what I understand.
that's true as well. Yep. But yeah, I just think that's absolutely fucking mind blowing that the majority of genital mutilation on male infants is happening by female physicians. And really, it's just like dominated by, I mean, the nurses, the pediatricians, the obstetricians, they're all women. I mean, it's like a woman dominated, those are women dominated fields. And these are the same women that are screaming, "My body, my choice" at the top of their lungs. And then I don't even want to say they're robbing a choice. I don't even know why I bring up my body. This is not a choice. This is a felony sexual assault on an infant. So there's no choice discussion even happening here. So I don't even know why I brought that up. It's just straight up felony sexual assault or sexual battery
And
on an
and
infant.
I often feel like I can't speak to the gendered nature of this atrocity because there's a prevailing cultural narrative that men can't be victims. And
Yeah.
among other things,
And
I think that
especially even
really,
challenging women in any meaningful capacity. I mean, they are, for not necessarily for us, but for all. The reality is that it's possible that if we're considering this felony sexual battery, then it's possible that the vast majority of sexual offenders are women in this entire country. They could seriously just straight up dominate sexual offenses because of this issue. And you could make the narrative that women, by far and large, are the sexual predators in our communities, by far and large, and they'd actually dominate the metrics if we
yeah,
were to incorporate this.
yeah, I
They're
think,
committing the highest order. They're committing the most sexual battery, and the most rape on children is happening at the hands of
mayhem,
women. There
sexual
is actually
assault.
an argument
Yeah,
to
I
be
mean, there's
made
a
there.
couple different charges that could stick. Yeah, I mean,
Charges, yeah. And that's,
yeah,
but yeah, I get what you're saying there, Jack, in the sense that it's so
Well, I think I logically agree with all that. I think you'd be correct to say that thing about if you counted this as sexual battery, which I do, then might mean that women are the vast majority of perpetrators of that. I feel
Yeah.
very almost hesitant to say that, and I think my hesitancy is in some ways almost speaking to the oppressiveness of the power system here against us. As in this incredibly personal sexual violation happened to me, and I feel hesitant to even speak freely about it. And that's an incredibly weird spot to be in.
That's really well framed. And I think we've all experienced that to some degree, is that we're now really pushing back on an entrenched power system. And I don't want to say it's just feminism. I think that's a very juvenile way to frame all this. But I certainly think dimensions of feminism played a role in creating this environment that we're in now. But I think it was a pre-existing environment that we came into and inherited. Yeah, goddamn, being a victim as a man, and really, this is some real deal shit. This is not, we're a minor victim or something. This is genital mutilation of our bodies, and we feel like we can't even openly be a victim about this. Like, there's so much hesitation around men being victims of anything, but in this case, this is a straight up atrocity that happened to us, and we still feel it difficult to open up about this and really just say, hey, we're a victim of anything,
It,
let
it's
alone genital mutilation. So
it's the
I find that
single
whole
worst
dynamic, yeah,
ongoing
really
human rights
interesting.
violation in Western countries in North America. Well, if you looked at it objectively, I don't think you could really dispute that. And it's being perpetrated, just again, as a matter of fact, being perpetrated mostly by women against minor males. It's certainly a strike against the people who say a female-dominated society that we're sort of being ushered into is going to be a more humane society with more mind toward equal rights and bodily autonomy. That is just not the case.
Yeah. And I got a lot of pushback. I was one of the first people to introduce this into intactivism. The fact that it's the majority women, and I pushed it fucking hard, guys. I went into like so many subreddits, created alt accounts. I pushed like 5 years ago. I was pushing this so I just lost my mind. Once I figured it out, I lost my mind about it for a few months, and I just pushed this across. I think I talked with Greg about it even in the past, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago is when I really unraveled that, and I just started going ham in educating the rest of it. And now I see it. Actually, I think I played a significant role, not to toot my own horn here, but I think I played a significant role in propagating that around intactivist spaces and getting more people aware of that. And I got so many people challenged me. And I'm like, what are you even I mean, everything, the theory makes sense. The metrics that I'm presenting make sense. Once I could actually make an argument for it too, I did convince a lot of people that this is actually probably what's going on. And not that it's the biggest, thing to singularly focus on, but I just find it to be absolutely fascinating. It flips the whole script on its head, the whole narrative on its head. I feel like, of us being the sole perpetrators of all the world's issues, and women being the absolute highest level of victim that can't do anything wrong. Not that that's even fair to present it that way, but that's what it feels like sometimes, guys, if we're being honest. And I think that there's profound asymmetry, and we're not going to make this all about the discussion right now, but the asymmetry between men and women, and I'm just going to speak about American society in terms of how society treats us, the courts treat us, it's so significant. There is so much asymmetry in the way men and women are treated, in the frameworks that we have to operate under, and the responsibilities at times that we're operating under, that it really makes me at times feel like I'm not even comfortable with women being able to represent me in terms of voting. I'm not saying repeal the 19th. I'm just saying it feels uncomfortable to me that women are able to represent me, or not necessarily represent me, but have a voice in kind of or not necessarily even have a voice, but have significant influence in my for things that affect me. And I didn't break that down, and I want to be able to articulate that better. And I don't want to make this the focus of the conversation either, but yeah, I just feel like there's a lot of asymmetry there at the moment, and it's challenging for me to sometimes even interact or have certain conversations with women about this because of that dynamic. But I'm not sure if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I think there's a lot of men that probably feel like you, Carter, and I've probably seen them. That there's a lot in these spaces that is men feeling resistant or not feeling heard by the current social landscape and trying to overthrow that or change that in their minds. And for those people, this issue, the circumcision issue, that's something served on a golden platter to them. If you're looking for reasons to overthrow the current system, you don't need to go grasping really deep and thinking
Yeah.
really hard about different things. This is so easy and obvious. People want this. I don't know why they're not clicking onto this. I think maybe we just need to present it to them. But people are looking for what you're describing, and this is, it's a hole in one. It's a perfect shot for what they're looking for. So I think I don't know what's stopping them from picking it up right now. Maybe it's just no one's presenting it.
Yeah, then that's yeah, there's a lot to break down there actually, but I hear what you're saying. This is the most powerful weapon of the men's rights activists in their whole arsenal. This is the most powerful weapon. And for potentially other groups as well, like I've shared many times, this issue can be weaponized politically and socially in very powerful ways. And I think you're speaking to that briefly there, Jack. But yeah, we haven't even seen how this can be leveraged yet, or to any degree. And I'm curious to see, how that's all
I
going to
agree about the
evolve.
potential
Yeah,
of
sorry, 1 second here.
politicization of this issue. I think it was maybe a harbinger of things to come, the entire Andrew Yang thing, the fact that it could actually make national news for a presidential candidate to even utter the word.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, he had the kind of most benign comments. I mean, it did give us some credit. I mean, he did make a statement for sure, but it got picked up and propagated, and it became like the most dominating element of his
Oh, yeah. And I
campaign
mean, his
overnight,
handlers eventually got a hold of him and said,
basically.
you cannot be talking like this. You have to shut this down. But you can't really put the genie back in the bottle.
No, and we know his perspective. He was a total puss about it, but in the end, we know that he's aligned with us, and he knows that it's genital mutilation, and he also obviously knows that it's eventually going to be seriously challenged and abandoned and criminalized and hopefully policed. I mean, he seems to be aware of that trajectory, and that's something that almost, and not to deviate on this too much, but there's so many people who know that this is genital mutilation that maybe are intact themselves from other countries, and it's just like we've created such a culture of tolerance around this that they're just not going to challenge it in any meaningful way. But it's like that's what blew my mind at first when I was very innocent and thought, nobody really knows that it's genital mutilation. That's how it's still continuing. No, there's a substantial amount of people that know this is flagrant sexual felony battery and are not taking steps to begin controlling this deviancy within their communities at all. And so I just think it flies in the face. Like we're trying to make a big deal about Epstein and all these other things, and this horrible abuse is going on all the time, not even right under our noses, right in front of our
I would
faces.
like to say one other thing. I need to enter this into the record. I saw during a podcast where Brendan Marotta talked about the Andrew Yang situation and said that, surely this was obviously an organic
Mhm.
manifestation of rising pro-intact sentiment or something like this. And I have to say, that is not the case. This was a coherent, engineered attempt from a Discord server where Jellyfish Rave, me, I think Carter, AMC, a couple other people were there, and we made a
Yeah, it
dedicated
was my
attempt
forefront Discord
to
server in the
start
past, I
to
think.
troll high-ranking accounts. I mean, I think the AMC movie theater chain responded to me. Different, yeah. So
Stephen
I mean,
Molyneux
this is
replied to
evidence of
me.
what
I
social
remember
media brigading
back in the day.
can actually do if you target it, which is sort of what we were talking
Right.
about earlier.
Yeah, and we engineer it in a specific way. But actually, Brendan came back around. I think somebody informed him about that, and
Oh,
he's like, he actually gave the forefront server credit.
okay,
And
okay.
another time I heard him talking about it. Yeah, interestingly enough. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so unless you guys have any more to break down on that topic, I'd like to maybe pivot
Um,
over to the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
yeah, I did have one last thing to say about, in terms of like feminism, and I agree, I don't really want to dwell on this that much, but like they will actually say, men don't need men's rights activism because feminism is actually an all-encompassing ideology that supports bodily
Yeah.
autonomy everywhere, but they won't touch this issue with a 20-foot pole. So I don't know. I mean, you almost have no choice. I have to enter the popular culture as an outside invader trying to change it. So don't get mad at me. I have no choice. You've already said you're not interested in dealing with this issue. Another thing
Right.
is, I'm a little bit surprised that the men's rights activists haven't weaponized this particular issue more than they have. I mean, it's the worst ongoing human rights violation in North America. I would think The only one that comes close would maybe be conscription. Maybe in Europe where the rubber actually meets the road, that's actually could be even worse than circumcision just because people are actually dying in the wars, Russia and Ukraine and whatnot. But I mean, in North America, this issue probably is, in the present, it's probably worse. I don't know. I think it should be weaponized a little further, but
I,
I
I'm a,
don't know.
I'm surprised. I don't usually go on Reddit at all or the men's rights subreddit, but when I do, and there's posts about the circumcision issue, I see an incredible amount of controversy in the comments. As in, it seems as if almost half of the people on that sub are pro circumcision, and that's just so incredibly shocking to me. I think it also speaks to the fact that the circumcision issue is not being presented to them properly. This is a power grab. They should want to go for this, and I don't know why they don't.
Even if they feel totally
Are we
comfortable
talking
with
about the
their own
men's rights subreddit
situation,
or the
like even if they don't feel like a victim, they should recognize
are we
the
talking
the
about the MRA
possibilities here.
subreddit or okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, there's a sort of
but
fuddy-duddy
also
element
other
of the movement
subreddits,
that
but yeah.
says, "Oh, that's a strike against fathers' rights," and blah blah blah. I don't know, but I do know what you're talking about. There's a sizable
Right.
contingent that is not only not against it, but is actually probably for it.
Right. But to be fair, there is also a sizable number of people that are against it that we can
True.
begin targeting and leveraging in that community. And then I think we can build critical mass probably pretty easily in that community where we're just drowning out all the opposition in the MRAs. And I did notice that back around again 4 or 5 years ago, I was posting in the MRA subreddit pretty regularly, just trying to gas people up with screenshots of kind of like React content in a way. I would post a screenshot, I would give my commentary on it. And very regularly, I would hit the number one post for the entire day on the subreddit and have like 300 comments and 4,000 upvotes or something like that. And if you actually look on that subreddit, you can see if you look up circumcision, I think they're intactivist tag, you'll see my name come up in there because and you look at top posts, I hit a fair amount of top posts. This was 5 years ago, so who knows if they've gained a lot more members since then, so there could be new posts that have reached the top. But back 4 or 5 years ago, I had a collection of posts in the top like 50 posts on that subreddit. A good amount were from me for intactivist related content. Yeah, I think there's a ton of potential actually in that server. Even though there's opposition, I think there's still a ton of potential and there's still a ton of people that recognize what can be leveraged here, even if they don't feel like victims themselves. It's an international community. And I've noticed that the people from the UK, the people from other countries, they actually particularly recognize how significant it can be from the comment threads that I've read and things like that. So people are there's a people aware. I wouldn't say it's a sizable portion, but there's definitely people aware, and particularly so in the MRA communities, that know the potential here, but just don't see this centralized group trying to make action on it at this point in time. So that's what Forefront is. Maybe that's why we're here.
Yeah, it does. It frequently shocks me. A lot of like I said, I don't usually go on that subreddit, but I feel like some of the issues they talk about are almost grasping at straws. And I feel like
Yeah, yeah, I hear what
a
you're
lot
saying.
of people in various contexts grasp at straws to distrust authority or distrust the current system. People have convinced themselves the earth is flat and other crazy stuff just because they distrust the system so much. If you want to distrust the system, why would you not flock to this issue? It has so much potential. It's not being used right now.
100%. Yeah. We need to get that message out. This issue is world changing stuff. We can change the paradigms of the world, the order of the world with this issue. That's how powerful it is. It's the most powerful issue that the MRAs have to wield. And we can fundamentally change. We could take away all the other MRA points. With this one alone, we can fundamentally change the fabric of society to be more favorable towards men. We can just continuously pump this one again and again and again and again and again for everything. It's reasonable to be a perpetual lifelong victim when it comes to gender. I hate to say it, but this is genuinely like the one issue that you can gas up so fucking much and extract as much as possible from it, as it just covers so many bases. Infant, felony sexual battery. Our society already considers offenses like this basically irredeemable acts of total wickedness of the highest order. And it's something that's systemically condoned by our legal system, by our society. It was the systemic condonement and really promotion of genital mutilation. I mean, we can really just bury the hatchet here on this one. And I think it is appropriate. It's actually, I would argue that it's our duty to do so. It is our duty to begin disrupting the power structures and systems and the nodes of power, because they got this one catastrophically wrong. And now it's time to bury the hatchet into their backs, not literally metaphorically, but I think that's where we're getting closer and closer towards. And I wonder how this is all going to evolve eventually once we have the, the this issue in our crosshairs more, and we're really actually at the point where we can start changing society. I wonder, that's when we're going to really find out what we're up against and the pushback around this. And I want to give some thoughts on my theory on that. I think this, they're not there. The people who are in opposition to us, they were being challenged by a very different breed of intactivist before. And this younger generation, especially, the social issue environment that we grew up in and how we got very comfortable pushing back on authority and things like that, we're going to really bring some fucking heat to these people and some serious arguments, and we're not going to back down, I think, in a way that previous generations of intactivists might have. And we're looking to stir the hornet's nest here and achieve power and really start disrupting things. And I think the arguments that once we're actually in a position where we can make arguments directly to the opposition, and we're in situations where people are being exposed to our position and the opposition's position and us debating together, I think we're going to clean the floor with these people, especially someone like me. Hate to toot my own horn again, but having me in opposition to like a physician or something, or debating a physician, debating an OB, debating a pediatrician on this issue, all of their arguments are going to start sounding just cartoonishly ridiculous once they're put in front of somebody like me. In my opinion, who knows if I could be totally delusional, but that is my perspective right now, is these guys have no idea what they're going to be up against eventually. And I think obviously their strategy partially right now is to completely avoid the discussion with real serious operators in terms of the intactivists, in terms of people that can really put up a serious rebuttal to them.
I agree.
And I want to create more of those types, and I'll finish off on this and let somebody else go, but I want to create more of those types of scenarios where we are basically debating the people who are promoting this, or even condoning it, or even neutral on it. Because I think we need to, there's all these lurkers in this space that are evaluating kind of the arguments and what's being said. And I think we can just clean up with the opposition. And that's why they avoid us as much as possible, is because they know that. That's why all the physicians block me, right? All the nurses block me. All the people who are promoting this end up blocking me, is because they know that our arguments are so powerful and persuasive, especially when victims make them, that they have no choice but to run away from the conversation. When you're articulate and also willing and confrontational, when you're articulate and confrontational, but also willing to present yourself as a victim and speak from a place of real vulnerability, they just have no argument. They just crumple, is what I've noticed. So I want to have more of those experiences recorded and distributed and memeified and things like that, and showing that these people have no argument that are trying to promote circumcision. They just never get serious pushback in the podcast that they do, or in the discussions that they have. It's with controlled opposition and things, or and things like that. So it's all bullshit a lot of the time. Anyway, I'll stop on that.
I'm almost inclined to do that ourselves. If we can't get a real doctor, let's get a controlled doctor, or a doctor that we conscript to pretend to be a doctor to debate you.
Yeah, well, maybe we should. Yeah, maybe we should not reveal our whole hand. yeah, but I like that line of thinking as well. I mean, just the general vibe of it. That's what we're looking to do here. Control the narrative, win at any cost.
I think my interaction with the doctor on the Ralph retort might be a prototype for the type of interaction you want to have, which is just total confrontation,
we should review that again. Yeah,
being cordial, quite frankly. Yes.
Right, total domination, really. There's something that one of our members in the Discord shared for us to react to, but we're actually going to cover it on the next episode. And I do want to get into this. I want to do more research into it, because there is somewhat of a story here, a narrative to present, and a sequence of things that happened that led to this. Belgium Jewish and Muslim situation where there's some concern, well, not concern for us, but the Belgium authorities are looking to dramatically restrict this practice, and a group of Belgian Jewish and Muslim communities are pushing back on it. And I think there's some things to unravel there, but we're not in the best position to break it down right now. But what I do want to cover is another piece of React content. This is from a blog called Scary Mommy, where a mother published an article discussing her and her husband's arguments over whether to circumcise a child or not. And in this case, it's the mother who's pushing for mutilating the child, and it's the father that's wanting to avoid it. And so I think there's a lot of interesting substance in here. But what I want to get down to is maybe, just to present kind of how our opposition is framing their arguments, and how lost in the sauce that they are, and how far we have to go really in order to change our community here. That's partially the reason for sharing this, is it just shows how far we have to go and how we have to start constructing our arguments better for these people. But and just the bullshit that they're saying, that we need to be able to counter, and we just need control of this whole narrative here. But reading right here alone, circumcisions are generally considered safest and simplest in the newborn period, with few risks and complications. As for why this is the simplest time, the doctor explained that it's due to newborn. This is a physician here. She's a board certified
I
physician.
mean, this is
Karen is
just
her name,
factually
of
not
course.
true. Like, there's never been any
And
real analysis on this, but like,
yeah,
I don't
it's
know,
just,
according to some of these lawyers and physicians' estimates within the movement, something like 30% of infant cases actually have diagnosable complications. So where is that being?
yeah. Yeah, and then you read here, I mean, this physician is just trying to make an argument that infants have a higher pain tolerance than older children. Even if that was true, it's just such a heinous reason to try and justify mutilating a child's penis. But
Yeah, I suspect
I think it
it.
could be the exact opposite. I mean, I've seen evidence showing the exact opposite of that. So this woman is just fucking running her mouth and has no idea, I think, what she's even saying. She was told this one
All
time
she's
and
saying
has
here
just
is
ran
that
with it for years.
infants cannot verbalize the perioperative and postoperative pain. So therefore, I'm going to claim that
Yeah.
they have a higher pain threshold. It's just ridiculous. And it's worth
Well
mentioning that,
said. Yeah.
circumcisions have basically very little perioperative pain relief and basically no postoperative pain relief. They send people home with nothing, just with mutilated
Right.
genitals. And
Yeah.
sometimes they'll say, "Oh, give them Motrin,
Yeah.
give them
Egregious.
Motrin."
What? Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
they're in
okay,
a
okay.
right, in probably a
Yep.
perpetual state of suffering for weeks. Yep, in a critical time of neurological development. And then this is what just kills me on the parents. They're all. I'm gonna get back to this in one second because there's one other thing I want to cover. They're all just like rubbing Vaseline on their son's wounded penis. I mean, this is what makes it just irreconcilable to me for the parents, because they are intimately exposed to the depth. I mean, imagine, put yourself in this situation, looking at this egregious, bloody, kind of oozing wound on a child's penis, and then
It's
beginning
looking at
to
that and saying,
apply
I need to
Vaseline to your
masturbate that
child's
with
glands
Vaseline.
in that area.
It's fascinating. The
And then
screaming,
just
they'll
seeing
start
the suffering of
screaming.
your child. I mean,
It's
what's
incredible.
going on here,
Basically,
guys?
every parent of a circumcised child you see has masturbated their infant son with Vaseline. That's just a matter of fact.
It's just obscene. That's why I say the Epsteins are all around us, guys. The Epsteins are all fucking around us. And I really do have this like fear of, not necessarily fear in there's some impending doom or something, but I think that there's people with serious degrees of deviancy all around me in terms of, and in relation to this, mutilating their children. I really do see people as severe deviants because of this, if they're involved in this. And I think there's a lot of real substance to that. That is not normal or reasonable to see this type of injury on your child. These are the same parents claiming, I do anything to protect my child. I don't know about that when you recklessly hand them over for genital mutilation. And now you spend weeks taking care of this wound and you can't figure it out. You can't figure out that early infancy penile trauma needs to be avoided at all cost. You can't figure that. Basically what we're saying here is what they're insinuating, making it very clear to us is they can't even figure out elementary penile anatomy. They can't figure out basic child safeguarding. Why are they a fucking guardian of a child at all? I'm not comfortable with that. That's somebody who's failing the most basic primitive duties that a caveman and woman would understand. That is not a guardian of a child or somebody who should be in a position to be one. And obviously we're not going to, it wouldn't be appropriate. I don't think so. And it wouldn't even be feasible to take all of these children away from their parents. But I mean, I honestly wish that was done to me sometimes. I don't know, man. This is the defining element of who they are, child genital mutilators. To me, it's like they're a distinct class of people. You have, and it really supersedes everything else. You have the normals, and then you have the child genital mutilators. And there's other classes and things going on, but those are like the top level classes that we have in our society, and everything else is downstream of it. We have the normals and the defilers of children, the butchers of children. And we assign people separately from that as well, but those are the main two defining classes of our society. The great butchers, the defilers of children, and the normals. Obviously, I'm just, I'm upset right now and I'm trying to just run my mouth, but I don't know. There could be real substance to that as well, or real strategy behind that. But that's some crazy shit to be saying as well. That's how it feels to me, though. I'm just speaking how I really feel internally. That's the lens that I see things through. So there's the normals and the mutilators. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that, but
I think that's a good and probably strategic frame, as in that's how a lot of, it's reminiscent of a lot of other social justice issues and how they think about things. I could say there's the normals and then there's the KKK. And obviously,
yeah,
people don't like the KKK, and I think as the same emotional response should apply here.
It's quite a dialectic between the oppressors and the oppressed. Speaking of social justice movements, I had meant to include this earlier, but it strikes me that conventional, like actual civil rights movements today, the thing that is interesting about them, well, one thing actually is what you brought up, which is that they define oppressor and oppressed classes very sharply. But another thing is they have demands. They have very explicit demands, right? They demand justice, they demand punishment for the perpetrators, and they demand compensation for the victims. I think there's a lot to be learned from that for the rest of the movement.
right, yeah.
And it's hard to qualify as a member, as in, at least in my age bracket, like when I was in college, even if you were anti-racist, if you weren't anti-racist enough, or you did something that was implicitly racist, you were shunned, despite having the correct belief. So it was very, very hard to qualify. The social justice movement doesn't want you to join. It expects a lot of you to join. You have to really want it and work to be a part of it.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think there's a lot to unpack with all that. But for me on my end, guys, I do need to wrap up here soon. I want to keep going actually, but I'm going to be working pretty late tonight. So I think that's it for me for right now. Is there anything you guys want to finish
Well,
off on
the only
for this
reason that dawned
episode?
on me was because we were talking about angry, underserved young men, and I just was reflecting back toward conventional
Hmm.
human rights movements.
No, I'm glad we dove deeper into it. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, and just for our audience as well, we're using a new platform this time to record this episode. It's called Riverside, and it's possibly going to assist us in also breaking this episode down into individual clips that we're then going to post on social media as well. So be on the lookout for that, for potential clips and the long form video. And then if you're interested in joining a subsequent episode, feel free to reach out to us. And if you have any questions, if you have any React content or questions that you'd like us to address, we're particularly interested in that. So find a way into our Discord server or just email us directly and we'll take a look at those here. And I'm also actually looking to put together possibly just a simple form that will allow that can be shared really easily, that people can upload the React content to, like the photos, a description, and something like that. Just an easy way for people to submit that content to us without having to be in our Discord or email us, and they can do it frequently if they come across content, and they could just bookmark the form or something, whether it's a Google form or a custom form I build out. We'll probably distribute that here soon as well, because I'd like to make it as easy as possible to get that content to us. Cool. Well, anything else you guys want to touch on for this episode,
Subscribe,
or we'll
ring
wrap
that
it up here?
bell, leave a comment in the comments section because we thrive on that. I love that. If you think we're idiots, call us that. Start a big fight. I thrive on that. You're posting these on YouTube too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we can get into it in the comment sections with people for sure.
Yeah, or if you don't know what to comment that this issue,
Yes,
circumcision,
leave
is worse
those
than Epstein.
everywhere.
I'd
That
love to
needs
see
to
those
be the
comments.
first. We really.
The Epsteins are all around us. That's brutal, guys. That's brutal. Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that for right now. Looking forward to the next episode, and we'll leave it at that.
Bye bye.
Alrighty. Peace out, guys. Have a good one.